How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Lead Therapy, and thank you so very much for taking time for tuning in to my video. The Supreme Court may overturn the bump stock ban. In the wake of what happened years ago in Las Vegas, there was a big push for a bump stock ban. After all, many claimed that without those stocks, the gunman wouldn't have been able to maintain such a high rate of fire, and many lives might have been saved. As most of you know, you don't need a bump stock to bump fire certain weapons. But the pressure was enough that President Donald Trump directed the ATF to reverse their ruling on bump stocks. Now the bump stock ban may be overturned by the highest court in the land. The U.S. Supreme Court could be poised to strike down a ban on bump stocks introduced following the 2017 mass shooting in Las Vegas that left 58 people dead. The justices may be preparing to hear two lawsuits challenging the bump stock ban, which was introduced by then President Donald Trump in 2018. As the new judicial term begins October 3rd, two lawsuits challenging the ban. W. Clark Aposhian versus Attorney General Merrick Garland and Gun Owners of America versus Garland were due to be discussed by the 9 justices at their conference on September 28th. The cases center whether the ATF was in error when it defined bump stocks as machine guns under a 1986 law that bans machine guns. The ATF had not previously defined bump stocks in this way. The Supreme Court's majority ruling in the landmark firearms case, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, in June may also indicate a willingness to address the bump stock ban. Now let's be very clear here. Bump stocks are not machine guns. They never have been. And there's a reason the ATF didn't define them as such. A machine gun is defined as a firearm that fires multiple rounds with a single pull of the trigger. A bump stock doesn't cause a gun to fire multiple rounds with a single trigger pull. It makes those trigger pulls faster. It should have never been changed in the first place. But will the Supreme Court actually overturn the ban? And of course, that's a very tricky question. The Second Amendment is pretty clear and doesn't differentiate between any particular kind of arms. The court has argued that banning dangerous and unusual weapons is certainly acceptable. Basically, this is a way to keep the NFA on the books, with its restrictions on things like machine guns and various destructive devices. Instead, the court has argued that arms in common use are the ones that are protected by the Second Amendment. So while the bump stock doesn't actually meet the definition of a machine gun, because of the current state of things, you can't really say they're in common use. After all, they were banned, and there was no grandfather clause included in it. Even before the ban, bump stocks were a novelty for the most part. A number of people had them, but most people didn't bother. They didn't find a need to buy such a thing. That means they were never really in common use, even before the ban. Now with that said, they were also a semi-new product. They had been out for a few years, but new technology doesn't exactly get instant acceptance. Over time, bump stocks might have been standard on many firearms if given enough time. So is that something the court will consider? Regarding the bump stock ban, honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is that such a ban should not be upheld. The plain text of the Second Amendment is about clear as it gets. As it is, though, we'll just have to wait and see. I never owned a bump stock. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people thought they were a novelty. But even though a lot of people didn't care for them, you should at least care what happened to them. Because you know the politicians, no matter what side they are on, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And that includes the ATF. As always, let me know your thoughts about the story in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, or if I gave you some information you didn't know, please help the channel out by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hitting that post notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.